Coming up today on Locked On Texas Tech, are there actually teachable moments for the Red Raiders following a 53-point win in Week 1? Defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter thinks so, and we'll bring you what he has to say. Also, reason for a little Friday party on Locked On Texas Tech. It's an expanded college football playoff. We'll talk about all of the ramifications, what it means for the Red Raiders, and what it could mean for conference realignment. Coming up on Locked On Texas Tech.
You are Locked On Texas Tech, your daily podcast on the Texas Tech Red Raiders, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We're going to start this thing off right. Raider!
Thanks for joining us once again on Locked On Texas Tech. Your team every day is part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm Casey Cowan with Chris Level, and today's episode brought to you by Upside. Download the free Upside app right now. Use promo code LOCKED. That's promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Chris, we have taken some time to really talk a lot of Red Raider football this week, as we should, with a season opener in the rear view. But something you and I have discussed ad nauseum on local radio airwaves and beyond for a decade and more, really, has now come to fruition, at least on paper, an expanded college football playoff. I think it's a good thing for Texas Tech. We'll get to that coming up. But in general, I think you and I are both probably simpatico in saying it's a good thing for college football and college football fans.
Yeah, I have a couple things. One is what took so long with it, because they ended up doing exactly what everybody kind of thought or wanted them to do, a couple of years ago, maybe even before that. But my main issue with the whole announcement is you kick that out on a Friday afternoon of a college football weekend. Where are we in April or June? And you could have let us know. I mean, we would have had a field day with it at the time. So it almost, as massive as that announcement is, it almost gets buried on a Friday afternoon news dump. I mean, typical college football in some ways. But no, I love it, man. I mean, I'm all about it, and I'd love to get into kind of what they decided. And you're right, how it affects Texas Tech and programs like it.
Yeah, and I would say that, as you point to there, we're doing something now that not only have fans been clamoring for a long, long time, but something the likes of guys like BCS Executive Director Bill Hancock say we'd have to crawl over a dead body. Guys like Gordon Gee, E. Gene Smith. Yeah, those types of names, guys who don't have televisions in their living rooms at home, were complete and total obstacles to this. So I will not applaud any of the above to now finally drag this carcass across, hopefully sooner rather than later. And Chris, it is kind of back to, something we've discussed before, whether it's realignment or television contracts. When there's a will, there's a way. And it seems like regardless of the time period maybe remaining with some of these agreements sometimes currently in place, and we've got until 2025 presently with this college football playoff agreement, that kind of goes out the window if they want it to. So you see reports about, 2026 is the launch date, but typically most of the articles I've read also include the line, unless something is instituted sooner, which leaves it entirely open, of course, to something being instituted sooner, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, and you know who had this nailed last summer was Bob Bowlesby. This is exactly what he wanted. They did exactly what his suggestion was. Now, he faltered at some levels, but he was dead on this. And he shouldn't be suspending radio announcers or reprimanding people publicly for
big fella,
easy for nonsense. Which the public reprimand is like something that just makes my head want to explode. Anyway, yeah, I think this is going to happen sooner than later. I think that part is nailed. Here's the fascinating thing, because we were kind of curious. Okay, if they expand to 8 or 12, they've decided on 12. How exactly would that look? Like, what's the infrastructure of it? Like, how long is there bye weeks? Is there how many conference champions? Do we have automatic bids? Is there some sort of limit on how many teams from one particular league could get in?
Right.
And what we have is the top 4 teams getting a bye week. We do have home games with the caveat that if they want to move it to a dome or whatever nearby, that they would be allowed if the weather's going to be bad.
Is that coming through the mic? Don't screw this up. You have the
Yeah.
chance to have this on campus. That's been one of my number one wish list items, Chris.
Yeah, and I think what you get is some of the things that people haven't thought about is you get some of these maybe southern teams that would never go play up north that late in the year because they've never had to.
True.
Because their league doesn't have members up there that you could see, a southern member end up playing north or maybe even an East Coast school getting to play in a West Coast and get out of their weather, and go play an opening round game on the West Coast. Who knows? But I just think it's got a little NCAA tournament vibe to it, although I don't want them to necessarily try to recreate the NCAA tournament. But here's the thing, too, is that the Big 12, whether they add anybody or not, they are a player in this thing because their champion will be included in this playoff. Same with the Pac-12. And it makes you wonder about realignment and I've got some separate thoughts on the realignment aspect, too. But I just think as it relates to the playoff, everybody gets to share in the cash, man. Those 6 or 5 leagues, the Power 5, and then that best group of 5 team, they get. And these rankings are going to matter now more than ever before because it's about buys and who gets in and all that. So we're going to be paying attention to these college football rankings and these quote unquote playoff rankings more so than ever before. Because used to, after about 6, it's like, yeah, I don't really care. But now, 1 through 20, we'll start paying a lot more attention.
Which, in large part, is kind of rooted in what was my, I guess, just biggest point of frustration, or one of the many huge points of frustration with the arguments against this for so long, Chris, because they would talk about diluting the best regular season in sports, aside from the FCS weekends or the November vacation weekends for the SEC programs. They would talk about somehow lessening a regular season experience that now I only see as strengthened for more fans and more locations further into the season. I don't necessarily understand what's bad about any of that. And to bring it on home to Texas Tech, I don't know, as a Tech fan, I really believe that for programs of the ilk of Texas Tech or someone very, very similar, and I swear the spirit of Bill Hancock must be in the room. I got a fly swarming me. Which one of these guys has passed on? I know somebody has kicked a bucket by now.
Yeah.
Good grief. Are you seeing this? This is like a plague upon me. I'm smelling sulfur in the office here because of the way I'm talking about it. But I think programs like Texas Tech, I'll finish the point now that it's gone. Programs like Texas Tech have always had a better chance on the field, on the scoreboard, than in the boardroom or the committee room. And finally, you're stepping, at least to some degree, further away from you being profiled and valued within a manila folder. And that's something I like for the vast majority of college football.
Yeah, and I think I think that there's some people that have had, man, we're going to get bad playoff games now. What I'm like, what have you been watching for the last 8 years? Because there've been a lot of these semifinal games that have just been bad, lopsided.
Sure.
People kind of, I think one of the arguments for the 12-team playoff is it eliminates a lot of that gap that we get when people kind of, I'm going to just kind of focus and put the college football toy down a little bit, play with the NFL and play with the holidays and Christmas, and I'll try to ramp it back up. And some people do, but now you're going to have more of a structured setup to where you'll kind of somewhat play straight through. Here were some statistical, because I thought the Alliance blocked this last year. It was the Big Ten and the ACC and exactly, and the Pac-12. So
that's his spirit is flying around in the room. It's the ghost of the Alliance.
they threw up the red flag and all that and got it stopped. Because I think that their fear was mainly the Big Ten's fear was, this is just really a play to get as many SEC teams in this thing as possible. And I think, so what does the Big Ten do? They're like, let's go shopping. Let's add to our league and all that stuff. But there's enough data out there that would tell you that of the 12 teams in the last 8 years, about 6 of those bids would have come from teams that are currently in the SEC or the Big Ten or soon will be, if that makes sense, like include USC, UCLA, and Oklahoma and Texas. So half of the bids come from those two leagues, again, based on the last 8 years. But the number that I saw that fascinated me, and Casey, this is to your point about the Red Raiders, 41 different programs would have made the playoff in the last 8 years under the what will be the new format. 41 different. And that has to be music to your ears because you have a legit shot and you don't necessarily have to win your league. I would suggest that you do that. But if you have a really good year and you finish second and you're ranked where you need to be and, whatever, I mean, I think you get it done because, I mean, Oklahoma State fell short of the goal line last year to win the Big 12. I think both Baylor and Oklahoma State theoretically could have been in a playoff last year, even though only one of them won the league. And so yep. I think it does. I think it increases your chances. I'm all for more football. It's more money for everybody. It's more TV time for us being able to watch good stuff. I mean, sign me up, man. I see nothing wrong with it whatsoever.
Well, and I was always a little skeptical of the gap whenever it comes to those teams that I guess were qualified or deserved to compete for a championship and those that didn't. I mean, that point is kicked out. You want to talk ad nauseum all day. Well, there's only so many that actually are of the caliber to even compete for a championship. Well, how the hell do you know? Well, look, it was one of the 4 that won it. So there's only, roughly 4 that are qualified to even compete for. Oh, well, that's very convenient for you. But there's an example last year, Chris, of the Georgia Bulldogs being in a much different position than they would be in a previous system by not winning a conference. Or I'm sorry, in the future system by not winning the conference. And there's a gauntlet there for them to run. And what if they don't prove to be the national champions? Well, does that disrupt the entire argument that no, they clearly were of the caliber that they deserve to compete, even though they might have got beaten in a quarterfinal matchup by Baylor in the playoff system? I always thought that was a crock as well and just something to use as an obstacle, primarily by those who are in that group, which is, 3% previously of those who participate in the friggin' sport. And that's the other thing that just keeps me from rushing to the altar to bow at these brilliant minds that are now going to bring us this expanded college football playoff. It's 9% still, folks, of those who are strapping it up. That includes Power 5 and Group of 5, but still a tiny percentage allowed to actually have a pathway to a championship. And your regular season is not the playoffs, so spare me that. But, Chris, I add the Group of 5 fans. Every Group of 5 fan now has a path when the season starts to potentially play for a championship. And it's going to most often just translate into playoff qualifier. I think we all understand that. But who cares? The path is still there. You've got it in your mind as a fan, got it in your mind as a player, coach, whatever. I mean, I know there are going to be some pitfalls to this, and time will reveal what those are. But for a long time, had a really hard time reconciling the arguments against these things.
Calvin, here's another point, too. We have seen this trending this way in the last, 3 to 4 years, where we get to the end of the college football season and really good players decide, you know what, I'm not going to play my team's bowl game.
Bingo.
I don't want to do it. I think this also opens up to see the better players on more teams finish it out and play in the playoff, for a chance to win the national championship. And I certainly don't criticize those guys that have said, man, it's just because, here in Lubbock last year, we had Eric Izukama, that bailed out of the Liberty Bowl. It didn't bother the Red Raiders. They went on to roll Mississippi State and all that. But I think it sucks to watching, sitting there as a fan anyway, watching bowl games and all that. It's like, well, so-and-so and so-and-so and so-and-so is not going to play. They've opted out. And I get it. And they should look out for their best interest. But I think this also opens up a scenario to where you'll see more of those guys opting in and choosing to play and stay with their team and trying to finish it out because they'll have a chance to win a national championship.
Only time will tell on that as well. But I would predict that if they continue to opt out, the ire of the fans through the roof, because it's no longer like, oh, we understand you skipping the car wash bowl. You're skipping a quarterfinal match. So that could be pretty interesting to watch play out as well. But I'm hoping on the side of what you're describing there, and it kind of alleviates what's been a little bit of a a point of frustration, I know, for some. I think
I'm
most
all
of us
about a
do
good car
understand
wash
it,
too, man. I'm all about a good car wash. I mean, Cheez-Its and Weed Eaters and there's all kinds of shenanigans, man. I'm sign me up for a really good car wash, man.
Cheez-Its, Weed Eaters, car washes, and a
The-
Jason Morrow throat punch. These are the bold memories of our youths.
and mayonnaise. Yeah, we got Duke's Mayo.
The
bowl.
Duke's
Yeah,
Mayo Bowl
that's
is
right.
going nowhere. We're lathering that pigskin up, coming up once again this holiday season. Please, God, before we move on, do not screw up the on-campus games. And I would say there probably is a time and a place somewhere for maybe a neutral site of the host choosing. So be it. But Chris, I really feel like this was a pipe dream all these years. I have longed for the days of postseason on-campus events, and just the imagination runs wild with what that might feel like. And here's the other deal. Why does Atlanta, Georgia, why does Miami, Florida, why do some of these places receive all of this economic benefit when college towns across America, some less than half the size of Lubbock, Texas, could be seeing this benefit? So there's a whole lot to like about that aspect as well. Right now they're saying only first round. I'm hoping maybe that's bargained out to a little bit further into the postseason at some point in the future. But I can't believe we're actually going to get this. This is huge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the few things that stuck out more than anything else, as far as like with their agreement that they had allowed to do it. I don't know, it may be a ways off before everybody's willing to agree to go play quarter and semifinals and all that, on home campuses, just because, boy, because home field advantage in college football is big. I don't know if they'd ever do that in the college basketball scenario, but I mean, hey, I'll take what I can get. And so far, I got to tell you, man, it's and it's funny because the top four teams won't even have a home game. It's just those, if you're seeded 5, 6, 7, or 8, they're the ones that will benefit, and all that economic, push and all that comes with it. They'll get to benefit from all that. And it could be that one of these group of 5 teams ends up being one of those hosts too.
That's right.
And I think that would be pretty fascinating to see that as well, because some of those stadiums aren't very big, I mean, so,
maybe that's an appropriate neutral site moment. I don't know.
My
my understanding is it's the choice of the host, though. So it would be up to Cincinnati or whoever.
Well, now granted, Houston, Cincinnati, Central Florida, and BYU, those types they're not going to be group of 5 pretty quick. But anyway,
I'll let you go back. I'll let you go back while we talk to the Four Corners, if you don't mind. You got any buyer's remorse or whatever? I will say this, though, and you're right about working those on-campus sites further into the postseason. Of course, you got New Year's 6 bowl games to deal with, and now I'm thinking about the families of those executives and their team-building workshop Caribbean cruises. Yeah, I don't want that to end for these Fiesta Bowl fat cats. I mean, what was I thinking? We got to see this continue. Coming up next, let's pivot, but we'll stay within the same ball game here, Chris. I do want to ask you if this could change concepts of realignment, or what a conference needs or doesn't need, or maybe what a university needs out of a conference or doesn't need. And we'll get to a very, very interesting comment from Big 12 Commissioner Brett Yormark coming up ahead. But first, I want to stop and empathize with you, because I know that you, like me, are cringing at the pump. You're cringing at eye-popping checks in your favorite restaurant, inflation hitting us all where it hurts, and it's hurting really bad right now. That's why I am in on Upside. Upside is an awesome app for everyone who buys gas, groceries, or dines out, which is, 99.9% of humankind. So with every purchase, earning cash back thanks to Upside. And let me tell you, cash back feels good everywhere, but oh boy, does cash back feel good at the gas pump. About as much fun as you can have these days with your clothes on. To get started, download the free Upside app and use our promo code LOCKED. That's promo code LOCKED, LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn 3 times more cash back with Upside. So download that free Upside app today and use promo code LOCKED to get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's promo code LOCKED and get cash back now with Upside. Also, got to say what up to our friends at Jay's Salsa. Appreciate them for supporting Locked On Texas Tech. This is Red Raider owned and Red Raider proud, Chris. And we mentioned it earlier in the week. Had a few friends dive in. And let me tell you, the reviews, they're raving about what they found with our friends at Jay's Salsa.
Yeah, they're good people. It's a great recipe. It's a great local product, but that product, you can get it in Albertsons and HEB and United and Market Streets and all those things across the state of Texas and a lot of places. It's a red and black jar. So I think there's your hint right there with a big old J on it. Check that thing out. I think you'll really dig it. It's tailgating season. It's going to be tailgating season and chips and hot sauce season for a long time. So go check out jsalsa.com, man. We would greatly appreciate it. And I know they will. And it's really good stuff.
Yeah. And if you're a Red Raider or otherwise, it is the tailgate staple this fall, and expecting a hell of a tailgate scene coming up outside the Jones here this weekend. And as Chris mentioned, United Supermarkets, Market Streets, Albertsons Markets, Texas, New Mexico, and also right here in the LBK at HEB, or check them out. They'll ship anywhere in the U.S. at jsalsacompany.com. That's jsalsacompany.com. Glad to have you with us on Locked On Texas Tech, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free, no paywall on YouTube. Subscribe there. We do appreciate those who are saddling up. I got the grandmas subscribed at a family dinner the other night. And if they can do it, Chris, I mean, come on. What's the excuse for anyone else not to?
Yeah, it doesn't cost you a thing. But we say this every day, certainly have as we kind of got going with this thing. We really appreciate the support, man. And yeah, I talked to my mom. She's like, does it help if I listen to it twice?
1,000%. Let's find out.
Yeah, that's right. I'm like, but Mom, if you're out there listening, man, we appreciate you. You can even listen to it 3 times. But
I got the dog watching it overnight on repeat in the living room.
That's right. That's right. But yeah, love you. And thanks to all the peeps out there, subscribing and listening to us and all that stuff. And thank you to the people on RedRaidersports.com. Great Red Raider content and all that stuff that are listening to this on a daily basis as well.
Yeah, for sure. And if you haven't subscribed, do it now at YouTube or anywhere you find your podcast. And we see all these numbers, and I think it's something like north of 60% of viewers not subscribed. Do you even live in this neighborhood? Let's go ahead and rectify that. All right.
You're offended. Yeah.
Let's go ahead and rectify that.
Yeah.
Appreciate those of you who have done that so far. And you can tell I really mean it because I am folding my hands in a prayer-like gratitude fashion here on YouTube. Chris, we were just talking about an expanded playoff, and I got to tell you, one of those things that has been rolling through my mind as it relates to the future of the Big 12, post-Texas, post-Oklahoma. What does this mean for your path to a championship? Do you have a path to a playoff to begin with? And I always felt like if you wound up in a scenario where the Big 12 has an auto bid, whatever that looks like, then the news doesn't have to be so bad for those remaining members. Now, this isn't an auto bid exactly, but it is highest 6 ranked conference champions. The Pac-12, keep your head on a swivel. You may find yourself out still at some point. I don't know, but I feel pretty good as constituted by the current Power 5 structure being within that, right? So it does seem like the Big 12 is going to potentially have that path, which is a good thing for all involved. But I wonder, in that light, do you think it could actually change the way that a conference looks at what they're wanting potentially in realignment, or even what a university may be looking at and wanting from a conference? Because the avenues to a championship or the playoff are not exactly the same right now as they were thought to be maybe a couple months ago.
Yeah, I think most it's an interesting dynamic because we weren't sure if you were going to get automatic bids, and I think if you are looking to add to your league, I think you don't feel like now, okay, I don't have to. We're good if we want to tap into that money and be a part of things. But I think that if there's somebody out there that you want to go add and you feel like it's a no-brainer, then go do it. Because you're thinking big picture and all that. Because what we get into, Casey, is that, look, if you start, here's what we don't even have from the Big 12 yet. I don't know what the conference schedule looks like just for next year when we expect there to be 14 teams. I also don't know what it looks like if it's just 12 whenever Oklahoma and Texas do. Are we having divisions? Are we doing pods? Mm-hmm. How many conference games are we going to have? We're going to have 8? We're going to have 9? Is there any sort of language in this deal that says, okay, everybody across the board's got to have this many conference games? Because everybody's loaded up their non-conference schedule with tough non-conference games. Everybody's at least got one that on paper at the time that they schedule it would be worth that extra data point. We've all heard those conversations. Do those philosophies change? Do they need to change? I mean, there's still a lot to kind of be decided and kind of filter through as we get going here because the dynamic has changed a bit. But if you're the Pac-12 and you're the Big 12, you don't necessarily have to add if you don't want to because you're still part of things. I would suggest that you do it if you find somebody that makes sense and that you want to grow old with. I would say, by all means, extend an invitation.
Doesn't it even more so emphasize the need to be additive and not dilutive when it comes to their television value? Any potential? I know that was already a priority, but like even more so, like Arizona, are you really kicking us anything? Well, do we feel? I don't know. And I wonder, conversely, I mean, is Oregon? Did I use that right, or am I talking about a guy apparently wearing Chuck Taylors? Inversely, Oregon, Washington. Do you want to escape a conference that could be? Is it easier to win now? And there's a lot of things that seem like they got a little bit more fluid potentially as far as the way you're looking at the path to what's, I don't want to say easiest, but certainly best, and maybe the path of least resistance.
I think a lot of these people, and this is the way I am in life in general, I'm a bird in the hand guy, man. And so if you tell me I'm an admin at Oregon or Washington, and you tell me you're going to give me close to 80 to 100 million a year guaranteed every year, whether I make the playoff or not, guess what I'm doing?
Oregon Trail in reverse, baby.
Yeah, that's right. East. That's right. It would have been fun to win a natty or play for it, and I know the easier path. But I mean, because you're talking Pac-12, it may be in the 40s or 50s. It's not even a decision. So I think, and keep in mind with the playoff expanding and some more money there, if you do go to the SEC or the Big Ten, that number could eclipse 100 million per year when you start divvying up those monies and they go to everybody in the league. I don't know, but I'm just saying that won't be a reason why they stay put and lock arms with their brethren in the Pac-12. No, they're going to say, if they ever get an invite, yeah, man, it was good knowing you. We appreciate it. Thank you for everything you've done. Go study hard, rest of you Pac-12 schools, but we're out, and that's the way it'll go. And the Big 12, I think you still, if you are in a position to add somebody that you think makes sense, and I think we know some of the schools that won't get a Big Ten invite that do make sense to partner with the Arizona schools, Utah, and I guess Colorado. I could be talking to that, but I specifically feel really strongly about Utah and Arizona mainly above the others. I think, and I'm always looking for a reason to go to Tempe and Arizona State, so I don't want to kick them to the curb either. But you'd love to grow old with those schools, and that gives you longevity. It makes you, less vulnerable, long term. And I think that potentially when you start dabbling in some of those markets of Salt Lake City and giving BYU a travel partner, you've tapped into the whole state of Arizona, potentially the Denver market, all those things that Colorado brings. And with that, you've added quite a few late TV times. Okay, to your menu, if you will, that the TV networks can pick from. I just think it's smart business, and I don't think it. Even though you don't need to, I don't think it should prohibit you from wanting to add at all.
You're talking about growing old with these guys, and I'm just thinking about 4 Julia Gulias, and Colorado is the ugliest Julia Gulia of all. I mean, I guess Colorado will let you in. I mean, now that New Mexico has gone the way they have, though, do we really even need to go to Colorado? Well, you're talking football, though. I guess Colorado, whatever.
Well,
if you want to,
they're not very good, man. I mean, they're not very good. I just of those 4 schools that have been talked about so much, I mean, Colorado is a distant last to me. As far now, what I don't have at my disposal is all the TV numbers that come with Denver and the potential. Does it move the needle at all? Because I just don't know if they're not, a guaranteed move the needle program, that I just don't see the need to add them, just because they're just, this isn't, I mean, you saw what TCU did to them the other night. Air Force may do the same thing to them this weekend.
God bless our servicemen. Hope they do. Well, regardless of what you see on paper, you never know what you're in for when you're in Denver. So I wouldn't go just putting the cart before the horse. I'm glad I had a chance to rock that. And you use monies right, I think. I've always wanted to be a guy that was smart enough, or I guess around money enough, to use monies appropriately. That's not easy, folks. Just kick out monies and it be like on point and not sound weird. Good job, Chris.
There you go.
Let's get to Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner. The way I interpreted this quote when asked about potential future expansion was, "This is how I say Arizona if I have to use as many words as possible." Yormark says, quote, "Well, I don't want to get into the specifics, and I appreciate the question, but obviously going out west is where I would like to go, entering that 4th time zone, as you just alluded to, a program that has national recognition, one that competes at the highest level in basketball and football, stands for the right things, is a good cultural fit, because our alignment right now and the like-mindedness of all our members' institutions is fantastic. It's never been better. So I don't want to compromise that, and that's critically important, that there is the right cultural fit when you think about coming in and being part of what we're building here," in quote. He had to mention basketball first for a reason. Nobody does that.
and he says we want somebody that does and stands for the right things. Is that how it was phrased in there?
That's
how don't have your basketball coach talking to people and get caught by the FBI. I mean, that would be a start.
Was maybe that wrong?
Yeah, they're trying to get that cleaned up. Yeah, shout out to Sean Miller. They're still obviously very good, and I just think we're in a new day and age of this is not how, and I hope it doesn't. Because most of this stuff has all happened in the dark. Oklahoma
right.
and Texas, this was just happened in the dark. Nobody knew. And then, bam, here we go. Mm-hmm. Same thing with USC and UCLA. It was just like, excuse me? Like, what happened? And it was, we'd like to welcome. I mean, it was all like within hours of it. It was all done. I mean, wrapped up and done. This is a little more out in the open and public, which makes me a bit uneasy about it. However, I think everybody knows the score. I think he's fairly brazen with some of his commentary. We're open for business. We're looking west. And I think the school presidents, who basically Brett Yormark works for, Lawrence Skuvenick being one of those, if they didn't support his stance or his comments, he wouldn't be making them.
Good point.
So I think that needs to be, because everybody knows what's up, and the Notre Dame part of this, the Oregon, Washington part of it, and maybe that's Cal and Stanford too, and then what's left, and the Big 12 will be able to go shopping from that standpoint. But Brett Yormark basically should have said, he could have said all that stuff, and he was just like, it would really suck to be Washington State and Oregon State. That's what he should have just said.
Yeah,
I mean, because at the end of the day, that part right there, we can move all the chess pieces around and talk about all these different things and TV networks and Notre Dame and Independence and all that stuff. Nothing has changed, but it would really suck to be Oregon State and Washington State. Sorry.
Man, I'm just pumped that what I used to beg for, predict in some ways, and kind of, I guess, now speak into existence is like almost on the cusp of happening. We got a little ground to cover, but Manifest Destiny Conference is not far away. We've got to cover some final territory out to the Pacific. but you get some of these Arizonas and whatnot on board. And by whatnot, I mean you, Colorado.
Yeah.
Manifest Destiny Conference is possible. So just keep that in mind, because I think it'd be a cool name for a league. I really have no other reason other than Central Florida was all of a sudden in the conference. So I thought, all right, got to go to the other side now. Let's go manifest on them. But it's in progress as we speak. So maybe some things have changed as far as the way that you look at the road to a championship impacting what you want in a conference member or the conference you want to be a member of. But I think Chris certainly is right whenever you're talking about what's still, making the world go round, and that is straight cash, homie. Speaking of cash, Chris, we're speaking of our friend Armin Williams once again of Schooley Mitchell. He's a Red Raider through and through, and he is saving Red Raiders and beyond cash whenever it comes to the efficiency of your business. And Chris, I know a long relationship with you has certainly built some trust with Armin whenever it comes to things like this.
Yeah, Armin used to work with me at RedRaidersports.com a long time ago. I think maybe 20 years ago. So yeah, I've known Armin for a long time. He was sitting in the front row of the basketball games when it wasn't necessarily popular to do so, and you had some runs, and he enjoyed the heck out of it. Doing that as kind of a fro bro. He was homecoming king and all that stuff was in the going band. And he's Mr. Red Raider to many, but he's been in the radio business for a long time, but now he's kind of doing his own thing and trying to save you money at Schooley Mitchell, but savewitharmin.com. And if you own any kind of business and he's trying to help Red Raiders out there that own their own business, go through various aspects of the way they spend their money, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. It will only save you money. And you share in that cost, but there's no upfront cost. There's no nothing that just let him take a look and try to help you. And trust me, he wants to help Texas Tech people more than anything else. So check out Armin at savewitharmin.com.
Yeah, and it's important to everyone to be able to trust the guy that they're
Yes.
letting up close to what means the most to them, and that is the business for just about everybody involved in this conversation. And so certainly Armin is one of those that meets that type of bill. So yeah, savewitharmin.com, no upfront costs, all starts with a free analysis, and then they only share in any savings generated. So think about what your business could do with some extra wiggle room and head on over to savewitharmin.com. Locked on Texas Tech, coming at you. LOTT. With Chris Level, I'm Casey Cowan. Thanks for joining us once again. Subscribe on YouTube or anywhere you get your podcasts. Back to plenty more on the Red Raiders and Cougars specifically coming up tomorrow as we get closer to game day. It's Tech in Houston, 3 o'clock from Jones Stadium. But to wrap this one here up, we did want to get back in that frame of mind, Chris, and take a listen to a comment from Texas Tech defensive coordinator Tim DeRuyter earlier this week, because clearly when it's 63-10 at the end of the ball game, you may feel pretty good about yourself. You may feel like there wasn't a whole lot to correct or be coached up on whenever it comes to the following game week. But it doesn't sound like Tim DeRuyter, and I'm sure this reflects Joey McGuire and Zach Kitley and everyone else involved, is going to allow that to happen. Here's Coach DeRuyter.
The fact that it was 63-10 had to do with our offense being fantastic, and we had an opponent that was a little bit overmatched. We have a lot of things to correct, and we are going to be harping on our guys this week to correct those things, because if we don't get it done, then we're going to have struggles down the season. So our guys they knew yesterday when they came in, hey, we're not brushing over anything. We're coaching harder this week on those mistakes. We were fortunate, we got the win. But we have got to correct those major mistakes for us to be the defense, because I think we can be a championship-level defense, but not the way we played on Saturday. The effort was there. I love that. I think our guys play with effort and energy, but our discipline of our eyes and our leverage has got to improve.
It is in coaching. It is typically much harder to coach in general, especially like at the high school and college level after a win than it is a loss, just because, you can tell them till you're blue in the face, man, competition's about to get tougher, but there's nothing like the motivation of feeling bad after a loss and everybody's down and all those things. But I mean, this is what good coaches do. They point out They don't let you slide. They point out, kind of what you've done wrong and let's fix it because, the competition is going to step up big time. And this was one of the benefits, Casey, in the 63-10 win. You played 71 guys in this game. I don't ever remember that really before. There were guys that were out there that were not on my spotting board. And usually like John Harris and I on our spotting boards, we've got, say, maybe 30-ish guys on each side of the ball. And they're you got a lot deeper than that just because it's just not realistic that you're going to get many more than that in the game. And so that is a benefit. But I think he knows, look, if you're Tim DeRuyter, you're saying, okay, our eye discipline, which we've talked about a lot this week, we didn't get any takeaways. We didn't hear the purge played over the loudspeakers, which we desperately want to hear. And we hear that every day at practice. And there's some other things that we need to get fixed, and we've got to get that done because Clayton Tune and the Houston Cougars are coming to town, and then it may even get tougher next week when you're dealing with the Wolfpack of NC State.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, it gets real in a hurry, and that's what some of those things I regret the most about an FCS type of matchup is the flip the switch need when you go into the next weekend, and it doesn't really resemble much of anything as to what you saw the previous weekend, and that's just probably true with like a Power 5 team or maybe even some just group of 5 non-conference matchups. But, I mean, these are top 25 opponents we're talking about here, and one of them being on the road, so you got your work cut out for you. Chris, I wonder if this is one of those weeks or moments where you hope to be able to rely on some veteran leadership, guys who have been through the process before, because I think it's one of the most understated challenges whenever it comes to sports, maybe particularly football, since you have an entire week to wait between games. But it's the difficulty not only in trying to bounce back from a loss, but trying to bounce back from a win, because you've got to keep that edge mentally. So preparing in light of success or adversity bring different challenges, but just as big a challenges, and maybe, like you said, even more difficult whenever you have had that success. So on the field, it's got to come from some of those guys in the huddle as well, doesn't it? Holding teammates accountable, things like that.
Yeah, and that's where your age is on this football team specifically, is on the defensive side. There's a lot of older guys on that defense, especially in the secondary and up front on that defensive line, that have just played a lot of college football here and elsewhere. And plenty of guys that played against the University of Houston last year, and so I think, and I don't know the number, but I think you're getting close to where this thing is sold out. It's not, I mean, there's a few 2,000-3,000 seats, I think, left. Last I heard, still tickets available, but I mean, the crowd will be a little bit different this week too. As much fun as it was, I think the fans know too, that it's a big game. This is the kind of game where you better get stuff corrected and you better play hard. The effort better be there, and you better get some takeaways, because with how tough your schedule is, if you don't get this one, and then you run the risk of going 1-2, going up to NC State. If you can't get that one, you start trying to figure out a way to get 6 wins and get to a bowl game. But if you get this one and it's in your back pocket, you've got a winning non-conference season, and you just got to figure out a way to get at least 4 more in the league. And so this is one of those swing games. And let's be honest, it was a huge difference in your season last year in your ability to get to a bowl game. So I think there's sense of urgency needs to be there, but it's just hard to do that after a win. But Coach DeRuyter doing his part, trying to make sure he gets his guys' attention for sure.
Yeah, and saying they could play at a championship level, but will not be able to do it like they did last time around. Well, here's a good opportunity to take a step in the right direction and, hey, hopefully return some sort of home field advantage to your home field, that being Jones Stadium. I'm thinking about ranked wins at home. Have you had one recently, Chris? I remember Oklahoma State, like in 2019, I think.
Iowa State, I don't think was last year. I don't think, they were 7-5 team at the end of the year. But I think it's been a minute.
Let's go on and get one. I know it's 25, and I know it's not a Big 12 foe or anything like that. But in state, and Joey McGuire would chastise me. He probably will, because I know he listens to this program intently every day for treating them not like a conference opponent right there. That's my bad, Coach. That's my bad. Might as well be a Big 12 game you got coming up this weekend. Yep. So why not rip off a big win over a ranked opponent. All right, Chris, appreciate the time here today. Enjoyed it once again. And we're close to a big game in Lubbock. We got one more go around here on Locked on Texas Tech tomorrow. We'll have it all covered there. And certainly excited for Joey McGuire's first big chance to really generate goodwill with the fan base as it pertains to on-the-field results, because he's done all the good, obviously, off the field. After Locked on Texas Tech today, want to make sure that you guys are making your second listen, the Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022. You got 8 episodes to get you primed and ready for the NFL season with local experts on the ground in NFL cities across America, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Got you covered from every angle. So right now, just search for Ultimate Pro Football Preview 2022 on your Odyssey app, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast. I've exercised some demons here today, Chris. Sat here the last 2/3 of the show with the fly swatter in my hand. Never saw the spirit of the Alliance again in the room. So I'm feeling good, baby. Thank you for your time, man. I enjoyed it.
Keep hope alive. Guns up, people.
See y'all tomorrow on Locked on Texas Tech.